Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Building the Tech Workforce of Tomorrow, Where, Why, and How, brought to you by Technology and Services Industry Association and sponsored by Tech Experts. My name is Vanessa Lucero, and I'll be your moderator for today. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. Today's webinar will be recorded. A link to the recording of today's presentation will be sent to you within 24 hours via email. Audio will be delivered via streaming. All attendees will be in a listen-only mode. Your webinar controls, including volume, are found in the toolbar at the bottom of the webinar player. We encourage your comments and questions. If you think of a question for the presenters at any point, please submit through the Ask a Question box on the top left corner of the webinar player, and we will open it up for a verbal Q&A portion at the end of today's session. Lastly, feel free to enlarge the slides to full screen at any time by selecting one of the full screen button options, which are located on the top right corner of the slide player. I would now like to introduce our presenters today. John Ragsdale, Distinguished Researcher and Vice President of Technology Ecosystems for TSIA. Aileen Elkins, Chief Customer Officer, Tech Expert. Gary Bennett, Country Manager, Rwanda, Tech Expert. Charmi Ryan, Chief Impact Officer, Harambee Youth Employment Accelerator. And Belize Inam, L2 Technical Support Engineer, Rwanda, Tech Expert. As you can see, we have quite the panel lined up for you today, so let's jump right in and get started. John, over to you.
Well, thank you, Vanessa. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. You picked a great day to attend. The previous webinar we did with Tech Experts was one of our top-rated webinars of last year. I think you'll find a link to that in the Resource Center on your On24 panel. If it's not there, it'll pop in just a couple of minutes. So I would really encourage you when you have some time to click through and watch that on-demand version as well. So there is certainly a lot going on in the world that is impacting the talent strategy for companies. A lot of discussion about the fourth and fifth industrial revolutions, the way that we interact with technology and all of the automation, which is certainly making some of our older workers a little uncomfortable and changing a lot of the skills requirements for recruiting. Of course, COVID-19 and work from home policies has really forever changed how we work, where we work, how we interact together. That is continuing to be a challenge for a lot of companies. And the Great Resignation, Great Reshuffle, now the quiet quitting trend, today's workers are really looking for a lot more flexibility. They want more fulfillment from their jobs. And a lot is going on with generational differences as well. And this information from a survey that we completed last year shows that looking at different age groups, there are some very big differences in their attitudes toward how long that they want to stay at their current employer. And contrasting the oldest group from the survey, the baby boomers, with the youngest Gen Z, you can see more than 2/3 of baby boomers expect to stay at their current job for the rest of their careers. Only 18% of Gen Z expect to stick around. So definitely we are seeing rising attrition rates and a lot of attention being paid to employee engagement programs to try to retain the workers that we have. But if your employee engagement program has not been updated since before the pandemic, I'm telling you, it probably needs an overhaul. And it's really important that you understand that there is no one-size-fits-all approach to employee engagement and retention. Different age groups, different interest levels, that you're just going to find that they are really looking for different priorities in what an ideal work experience is to them. So if you haven't done some surveys on this for a while, it is probably a good time to do that. So now I would like to turn things over to our first guest speaker today. Aileen Elkins is the Chief Customer Officer for Tech Experts. Aileen, take it away.
Thank you, John. And I'm sure many of the things that you just mentioned briefly there are already resonating with a lot of the people listening in today. And I'm going to talk through, just over the course of 2 or 3 minutes, some of the talent challenges that I'm pretty sure everybody will recognize and understand. You've shared some of the causes of those, but they're real challenges that we're facing every day. And of course, always to look at what are some solutions to these challenges and how we can source and skill talent and think differently about it. And with a couple of the speakers that we have today, we thought it would be great to be able to talk about the impact that some of these new approaches to sourcing and skilling talent can actually have. So these are the topics that I'm going to just talk through. And if we start with the challenges that we see people facing, I'd be absolutely amazed if at least one of these didn't resonate with everybody on the call today. And I'm quite sure actually that all of them resonate with everybody. So as you mentioned, John, through COVID, we saw people changing their working habits. We saw a significant increase in attrition, people reevaluating where they wanted to work, how they wanted to work, even whether they wanted to work. And that is not really slowing down. So people are continuing to evaluate lifestyle and choices. And of course, opportunities grew for people to work from or work for companies in new locations where they would never have had the opportunity before, as companies became much more willing, actually through necessity in most cases, to consider remote workers. So the attrition challenges we see people facing, and because of attrition and because of labor saturation challenges, we started to see high costs or high cost labor. So it actually became an employees market as opposed to an employers market. Employees knew that they were in high demand. If we think about digital skills gaps, the number of vacancies that are open for software developers, cyber skills, data roles. So labor is demanding higher salaries, and so that's been driving labor costs up. So people needed them, needed the resources. They couldn't find the resources due to sourcing challenges and saturation. The costs were increasing. And yet at the same time, look at what is happening now. Massive cost reductions being driven through companies across many industries. You just have to look at the very sad news across the large global tech companies reducing 10%, 11% of their workforces. And it's not just the large companies, but those are the ones that make the headlines. All sizes of companies are facing either real cost challenges today, or they are wisely anticipating cost challenges coming. So people are reacting to the here and now, but also really starting to plan ahead. So if you think about these challenges all thrown in together, the impact that has on a business's ability to run its current operations in an effective way, but more importantly, how to think about, but what about the future? And one of the challenges that I think that we tend to face is in a moment of crisis, and of course that moment is not a short moment, it lasts for a longer period of time, but in times of crisis, we tend to sort of hatch it down and think about the here and now and just surviving. And I think what we're really trying to encourage people to think about is, what about the future? How do we think about the workforce of the future? Which is not just, of course, looking at here and now, but what do we think we're going to need a year from now, 5 years from now? Companies are starting to think about the roles that they're going to need two years from now, 5 years from now, and beyond. And where will they find the skills for those roles? If we've just said that costs are increasing, that labor is in high demand, but there's a shortage of the skilled labor, people are choosing where and how they want to work, how will you source the talent that you need for the future? And it doesn't just happen by luck. You actually have to have a well thought through strategy for how to do that. And that involves thinking about, where you want to source your talent from that will give you less risk of high attrition, will give you the better cost that you will need, even if you don't actually need it right now, you will need at some point in time. And how do you attract those people, grow the skills of those people into the future roles, which actually, by the way, is a real strategy for also retaining those people. We all know that when our employees can see the options for growth and they can see what future roles they can move into, we know that that makes a difference to our attrition numbers. So we're really encouraging everybody to think about the workforce of tomorrow. Where will you find them and how will you grow them and retain them? And so with that, I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Gary, who's going to tell you a little bit about where we have focused within Tech Experts. We are, of course, a global company, but we're always looking for new locations where we can find an abundance of talent at a great price point with great opportunities for learning and skilling and sort of future-proofed in terms of growth. And so Gary's going to share a little bit about Africa and why that for us has been a great location and will continue to be. Gary?
Marvelous. Thank you very much, Helene. Great to be back with John, the TSIA team, and here, sat in a room talking to my screen to what is hopefully a couple of hundred people who are listening. And there will be a test on that. So listen well to what I'm talking about for today. It's great to be talking about the Africa solution as well. I moved to Africa probably nearly 20 years ago now. I was working in the UK and I moved to set something up offshore and simply didn't go home. And in that 20-year period, just in the time that I've been here, the amount of change that I've seen that's both in individual countries and continental has been really, really significant. And along with the news items that Helene's just talked around from the point of view of cost cutting and jobs and those things that are going on across the world, which are never good. You see the stuff as well that talks about Africa and what's happening in Africa. Box there talks about growing foreign investment. In the past, that would have always been possibly China, possibly creating roads and digging things out of the ground, but now far more investment coming from all across the globe. A definite redirection from US foreign policy around how do we invest, what do we do with Africa, because you can see that even from demographics, purely from people, 26% of the world's population will be living with me in Africa by 2050. So a significant amount of people, and significantly for our part of the world as well, where what we're all trying to do here on this call is that they are digitally native, they're young like myself, and they're ready and looking and hungry for work. So that idea of that great resignation turns into a great application. You've got the demand, I've got the people that we can train and we can fill the positions and create that skill of the future for this year, for next year, or as Aline said, for the next couple of years. Really big tech startup ecosystem as well. So I'm sat in Rwanda at the moment, sat in Kigali, and we have a number of different hubs here that are either startups for fintechs, for medtech, and those things make a really big difference because it comes from grassroots skill, grassroots innovation, and again, it feeds that desire to innovate, create jobs, create opportunity, and then with that, create the skill that can fill roles across the world. Infrastructure-wise, and again, we speak to many different clients, and from an Africa perspective, once you start realizing how many cables actually land in Africa, there's a brand new Google cable just landing in West Africa now, and we have a number of cables that sit across the country. So from an infrastructure development, really significant investment in country. I mean, in Rwanda itself, in Kigali, John mentioned the fourth industrial revolution. Kigali actually has the first 4IR center across Africa. So we focus on what does fourth industrial revolution mean? What does it mean from a compliance perspective, from a data perspective? So that feeds and sets up an environment that is very secure and very supportive of what we're trying to do globally and how and where you want to create and find that next skill. So I said there would be a test, and indeed there is. I want to make sure everyone's listening. So I've now clicked through to something that will look to test your brain. So as you're sat there now in your offices, in your homes, with the cups of tea and coffee and the dogs and children around you, I want you to answer a question. Which country is expected to surpass the US and become the world's third most populous country by 2050? So come on, everybody, fingers on the buzzers. Which country is expected to surpass the US and become the world's third most populous country by 2050? I'm seeing names coming in. I'm seeing people clicking buttons. Looking good. Looking good. What do we think? Do we think it's going to be someone like Egypt? Very popular African BPO, ITO destination. Philippines, well known, that's for sure. But where is that population going to be? Where is there going to be the third most popular country, surpassing the US as well by 2050? Well, looking good. And I'm going to give you the answer. The answer is, in fact, Nigeria. So Nigeria has seen its population surge from 19.5 million, which is significant, back in the 1990s, to 216 million now. So as you can see, a country like Nigeria, we have one of our largest operations there, has got the groundswell base for people to be able to go through education, to be able to go through the right level of learning, and then be ready to deliver the services we've got. And there we go. Well done, everybody. Good work. And I think the winner there is Karen Crawford from OpenText. Good job. I think you were the first one. And you are part of the winning team. That is 69%, nearly 70% of you guessed that Nigeria is indeed the right one. Okay, we're not finished yet. Your brains still need to be working. Okay, next one. There's 3 of these, so don't worry, the pressure will be off in a minute. What was the first country in the world to have a female majority parliament? So first country in the world to have a female majority parliament. Same selections before, so you can select on screen once the slide comes up. So is it Sweden, South Africa, Rwanda, or Bolivia? So the first country in the world to have a majority female parliament, even though New Zealand's just lost their female prime minister. This country has got the majority female parliament. Okay, let's see what we've got. We've got people coming through now, 21%. Okay, how's it going? So, which country? Let's see how we're doing. Oh, here we go. Here are the numbers that are coming through now. And I will give you the answer. I think the winner there is William Bonner from Salesforce. Good job. It is indeed Rwanda. So 41%. So where myself and Belize are sat now, a majority female parliament. More female members than anyone else, 56%. And it's also the most gender equal country in the world. So a 9th in the world from the point of view of just gender equality. So good job. Final question, everybody. Final question. Fingers on the buzzers. Are we ready? Are there indeed the same amount of French speakers in Africa as there are in Europe? So is that a true or false statement? There are the same amount of French speakers in Africa as there are in Europe. Simple one, this one. True or false? Same amount of French speakers in Africa as there are in Europe. I should say that question in French, shouldn't I? Qu'est-ce que c'est le French speaker avec dans Africa avec in Europe? That's why I don't speak French. Let's see how we're doing. Oh, we're saying true. We're saying true. Most people. Winner there is Nancy from Splunk, actually. One of the few people there, 13%, who said false. And it is actually false. There are actually more French speakers in Africa than in all of Europe. And that includes France, where there are indeed a number of French speakers. So thank you very much, everybody. That was just to get your brains going, just to get you thinking. And I'll move on slightly and talk a bit more about where we've got to from that talent life cycle. So we wanted to sit back, and our tech talent team wanted to sit back and work out what this looks like in the future. So how do you pause and rethink the way we look at sourcing? So we did that and started to say, it isn't just about finding the people. And sometimes it isn't just about skilling the people. It's about being able to put together something that allows you to find the people. So how do you source from global talent pools? So we have a number of locations across the world, and then work out where are the gaps and how do you make sure when you find those people, you bring them on and create an environment that's going to work for them. So then that moves into the skilling piece. And we saw from John's numbers earlier, a real big part of Gen Z is about feeling cared for and encouraged when you start working. So our onboarding process is in creating an onboarding and skilling matrix that mainly we use our Elevate teams to do that, that allow people to join and onboard in our company and other companies in a way that sets them up for success. They're already feeling cared for, they're already feeling encouraged, and they understand what's expected and how they learn and grow. And that learning and growing piece is driven certainly in our world through Elevate and through TalentWise, where we've got the ability to track your start point, the skills you've got now, and where those skills need to go as you grow your career throughout the future. And again, certainly from John's numbers earlier, we saw Gen Z, the biggest part of what Gen Z are looking for is feedback and recognition. So although they may only be looking to stay with us for 3 to 5 years, it's how do you make sure those 3 to 5 years are very rewarding? They've got that ability to learn and grow, and you can feedback and recognize continually as they're going through their careers. And the key to that then is how do you scale? We've seen that Africa has the scale. Rwanda, for instance, produces upwards of 50,000 graduates a year. And obviously, when you go to somewhere like Nigeria, that number is far, far bigger. So the ability to create models that allow the people that we work for, our clients, our prospects, to have services that can see us managing, provided a complete managed service, adding to the staff that you've got, so in being employers of choice, employers of record, or being able to build something and then transfer it in a location once you become comfortable with that. So that's what we wanted to do from a full talent life cycle. So being able to see how we find talent, we create it. But part of that as well is how do we do that? We've talked about the where and the what, and then there's the how piece. And there's something we talk about in Africa about it takes a village to raise a child. And we pulled together a number of different partners to be able to create employability programs. So where we see those gaps in the gap assessments from our tech talent kind of wheel, it's how do you then say, I need to bridge those gaps before people walk through the door to be able to work with any of our clients or work with the technologies that are important. So we work with the German government, GIZ and DSAA, who are about supporting digital skills across Africa. And part of the European mandate is for European countries to work with developing countries and create budgeting and schemes that will create employment. So it's moving from aid to trade. It's saying, how do you create jobs? You teach a man to fish and you give them the ability to do that, as opposed to just purely relying on aid. So we work closely with the German government and our colleagues within Elevate, and particularly NGOs like Harambee. And we created a scheme that finds and understands the gaps. We then assess for those gaps to make sure we understand what our start point is. We then provide a full suite of digital training. So that can be whatever technologies people are going to move into. So it could be a Microsoft suite, it could be Amazon Web Services, it could be the Google stack. And we start to train on that. So when the guys walk through the door with us or through anywhere else, so the program allows for employment across Rwanda, or any of the other countries we run them in as well. We run it in Nigeria and also in Costa Rica. So when they walk through the door, they're set up with the building blocks to be successful once you start layering on the product and system training. We also put power skills and any language ability that we need to change or add in there. And a key part to that is definitely around Harambee. And now I would like to beautifully hand over to Shami, who's going to be able to talk to the Harambee story. And I've worked with Shami for a number of years in different parts of Africa, and it's really great to have her on the call here. Shami, over to you. Talk a bit about Harambee and youth employment acceleration.
Thank you, Gary. It's really terrific to be here, and I'm so excited to share with you and reinforce really what Gary and the others have said earlier. Just to quickly introduce ourselves and myself, Harambee Youth Employment Accelerator operates in South Africa and Rwanda. I'm going to share a little bit about our experience both in South Africa and Rwanda. And like Gary, I think it's very clear that for us, we believe in the potential of young people. Harambee, the word itself, is a Kiswahili word, which means we pull together. Gary referred to the fact that it takes a village. We're definitely part of that village and couldn't do this without partners like tech and many others. But really at the heart of this is that Harambee believes in the potential of young people like Belize, who you'll hear from on this webinar a little bit later on. I wanted to start by sharing a few facts, both about Harambee's story, about our premise, and a little bit about our success in Rwanda and in South Africa. But ultimately, it comes down to the fact that young people are the engine that power the growth of this continent and will continue to do so. Gary referred to this, Aileen referred to this as well. Africa is the world's youngest continent and will have the largest workforce by 2030, of which 60% will be young people. What this really means is that young people have the energy, optimism, drive, enthusiasm, and ability to do a lot of the work that is available to them, but increasingly is more palatable to them because sometimes they represent economic mobility opportunities for young people, and they're ready, willing, and keen to grow. It's a growing destination for offshore jobs. Recent studies have shown that this sector, global business services, across multiple verticals will grow to about 10 billion by 2023, which is quite imminent, and it's also going to project to potentially 1 million jobs in the sector. And we're seeing that growth happen in markets like Rwanda, in markets like Nigeria that Gary's mentioned, and South Africa, as well as Kenya. We're going to dive in a little bit to Rwanda in particular. Rwanda is a country in East Africa, for those of you who don't know, has been plagued by a history that was, very, very difficult and quite challenging post-genocide. However, Rwanda has really come out of that with a really remarkable narrative of being one of the easiest countries in East Africa and perhaps on the continent to do business. It has consistently been rated, for example, second in Africa, first in Africa for ease of doing business. We ourselves as Harambee have benefited from this. I know tech has as well. Even during the pandemic, it's been very easy to set up business operations in Rwanda. Harambee started in South Africa, expanded to Rwanda in 2018, and very quickly reached and surpassed various scale milestones quite quickly, partly because of the ease of doing business in partnership with the government, but also in general, the investor friendliness of the country due to infrastructure and a number of other reasons. As Gary mentioned, there's a huge talent pool in Rwanda. There's roughly about 500,000 young people who are both bilingual in English and in French. Many of the language capabilities that you'll hear from, both from the young people on the call today, but in general, we know that young people have the potential and the hunger to grow and service a growing need for global business services across the continent and really the world. It has about 19,000 young people that graduate from tertiary education institutions every year. And we ourselves as Harambee have been working very closely with young people that come through the programs in higher education institutions to make them work ready and easily take advantage of this growth in the sector and in the world. A couple of points to note. A couple of years ago, 2021, Rwanda was named a top offshore customer service delivery destination in the world. And it was rated so both in Africa alongside Zimbabwe. Really goes to show that Rwanda is on the map. And I think this is a huge testament to the government of Rwanda. The government of Rwanda, for example, has an investment promotion institute called the Rwanda Development Board, the RDB, that we partner with, that Tech Expert partners with quite consistently. And it really works very hard to package Rwanda as a destination. Some of you may remember and know that Rwanda also partners with many great sports outfits across the world, like Paris Saint-Germain, Arsenal, etc., to try and attract tourism and customers to Rwanda for high-end tourist destinations like seeing the gorillas. So Rwanda has actually packaged itself as a really easy destination to do business, and it is definitely making an impact in terms of the number of jobs that it has been able to grow in the sector. The interesting fact about the GBS sector in Rwanda is that it represents something really important for the growth of private sector jobs in Rwanda. The average starting salary, for example, in Rwanda for a GBS job is roughly twice or three times the average private sector job in other sectors. So it does represent both an economic value proposition for a young person, but it is a hugely palatable and really quite an enticing destination in terms of ease of doing business and being very easy to grow the market in the region with government support. I'll talk a little bit about our own experience as Harambee. We started in Rwanda in 2018, and again, due to a really fantastic partnership with the Rwanda Development Board, as well as with the Ministry of Youth, partnered with them to understand what was really the big need in Rwanda for workforce readiness and bridging that Gary referred to a little bit earlier. Youth in Rwanda are hungry to grow and really demonstrate one of Harambé's core values, which is also ready to work. We, over the past few years, have developed a network of over 7,000 youth, of whom many of them really scored well on technical skills, but often needed a little bit of bridging and closing of a gap to get into entry-level jobs, such as with tech and with other contact center and global business services kinds of jobs. We realized that spoken English was an issue. So while young people were able to understand English and perform functions on written English, spoken English was a barrier. And we realized this quite easily in terms of assessing young people in spoken English, but they were able to, with our bridging program, quite quickly bridge this gap and be able to, with conversational English, with immersion programs, adequately service customer services needs for tech and many other clients that we're actually partnering with in the region. And we've created a pool of a couple of thousand now that are able to perform these contact center roles. And one of them is, for example, Eloy Inteniteka, who's actually a Burundian refugee that moved to Rwanda in 2015. He studied at Mount Kenya University and early on had the technical skills and was assessed by tech to start potentially taking on some of the roles that were available, but needed spoken English bridging. With a little bit of Harambé support, Eloy actually was able to score a B2 in English, now is a tech experts hire and staff member, and hopefully, as you'll see from some of the others in the webinar as well, are a really critical part of tech's growth plan and workforce in the region. We've graduated now actually over 100 young people in our spoken English acceleration program. Over 50% have been hired by tech as agents. And this is a high mobility job with great growth prospects for young people in the region. So not only is it servicing young people and providing them with economic prospects, it is definitely serving a business need. I will talk maybe at the end just in terms of the fact that we've had huge success as Harambé in South Africa. So not just in Rwanda, we've actually built the Rwanda business model after a fashion after South Africa's success. Since 2010, where Harambé's been working quite hard to build a business case for investing in the global business services sector in South Africa, we've generated over 100,000 jobs in South Africa, most of which are inclusive jobs. Over 60% are female jobs, and Black South African and female jobs. So in many ways, this actually goes to very, very excluded youth in South Africa who are generally excluded by the labor market. And they're able to offer a really high quality service and products. So Andy Sir, who used to run the Business Services Association in South Africa, BPESA, Business Process Enabling South Africa, I constantly am impressed with how much Andy is able to zone in on what the real value add of young people, for example, both in South Africa and in Rwanda and on the continent generally, to the sector. It's talent, it's potential, it's a hunger to grow, it's a readiness to work, it's an ability to speak English and learn quickly. And what I love about what Gary says here is high empathy, which is also really an important capability, especially in servicing customers across the world. And very last but not least, I just wanted to say that Africa is the youngest continent. It is also possibly as a result, the most optimistic continent. Across the board, young people in both South Africa and Rwanda and Kenya, where I live, have demonstrated really high levels of optimism. And while the rest of the world might be feeling quite bleak in terms of the future of work and where things go, I think engaging with young people like Belize, who you'll hear from just now, will give you a sense of what's possible in terms of potential and optimism and really what's possible in terms of the future of work. And it doesn't have to actually be as quite bleak as we think. So I'm going to leave you with that and actually hand back to Gary, and hopefully the success story of South Africa and Rwanda will convince you that there's quite a bit of potential in Africa to consider in terms of the global business services sector.
Marvelous. Thank you, Shami. That's awesome. And really good to see Eloy there. Yeah, he's one of the team here that I've got. And we want to talk a bit now about the impact. So we want to do the whole where, why, and how all in one package. And that package is the lovely Belize. So Belize is actually here with me. Well, she's about 2 floors above me, so we're sat in the center in Kigali, and she's actually up on the operational floor, and she's part of the technical support team here, part of our engineer team here. Hey, Belize, can you hear us? I feel like a roving reporter.
Hi,
there you are.
Hi.
Good to hear from you. thank you very much for coming on today. I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. So I guess the key thing is to tell us about how your journey began in your career in tech.
Well, thank you so much, Gary. I'll begin with the Harambee journey. I joined Harambee in 2019, where I was really looking for an opportunity, and that is what Harambee was providing for the youth of Rwanda. And actually, my first job, I was linked with through the Harambee program. That is when I first got my first job in the tech world. But after that, I really like the fact that Harambee did a follow-up. What they do is always a follow-up to make sure that you are in the right place and you are in a happy place, if that's how I can say. And specifically, I was contacted again by Harambee with the opportunity to join Tech Experts, where this is where my journey began. I applied, I got accepted to the Tech Expert, and specifically with the onboarding process, which included packaging me or investing in me with both with the technical skills, both with the soft skills that I needed to be successful in the tech journey. And that is when I joined tech through the Harambee program. That is where I got linked to Tech Experts.
Marvelous. And after you've joined, what does your growth look like in tech? What's happened for you for over the last 18 months?
Well, a lot. I'll be honest, that is a lot. I've seen so much growth throughout for the past few years. I've been with Tech Expert, not actually even a lot of years. And I'm so grateful for after the onboarding process, getting equipped with the soft skills, getting equipped with the technical skills. What followed now was going live, start picking cases, helping customers, and making sure that we provide the best customer service that we can. Part of what I'm so proud of is with all the investment tech did invest in me, having zero knowledge of the product of support that I was going to support, I was able to get promoted in less than a year while I joined Tech Expert. And that is something I saw as growth. Moreover, since what Tech Expert does normally is seeing what you have, the potential you have, I was introduced to the T4 program, which prepared me to be the future trainer of whoever needs either the technical trainer, either the soft trainer. And that is the potential I never saw in myself, but my company saw in me and invested in me that. And I've seen so much growth, getting also involved into the giving back crew to the community, making sure that what I do also reflect outside to the community. And that is all the growth I've seen and experienced while working with Tech Experts.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And congratulations. I mean, the work that you've done and how you've worked with the team over the last year, 18 months has been brilliant. You've been part of that first group that joined, and it's been stunning. And along with the growth, and you had the development piece, what's your day-to-day like? How do you feel about the role day-to-day and what you do and how you work?
What I like most here is that everything we do, we make sure we prioritize our customers. We are really eager to learn. We want to learn more, but what we do is we provide the best services that we can. Our daily work involves learning every day, but also making sure that we fulfill the duties that we have to do in a day. And I wouldn't say it's just a constant job, because being a technical support involves learning every day, either the product of support, either different customers that you're dealing with, specifically learning more about your product, but also getting to expand your knowledge, getting to also create different networks with your customers. And our daily work, or my daily work, involves from morning to evening, involves learning, because you pick a case, you don't know what you're going to do at that day, and you close the case, but you don't know what you're going to do tomorrow. So this involves preparation of your mind, getting ready for any challenge that might come up in another day, and making sure that you will provide the best support that we can. And with that, we value much with our customers' feedback. That is something we've seen in so much growth here, whereby you receive a feedback and you feel like you really done a huge job. We value so much our customers, and we value them along with their comments, with their feedbacks. This also helps our team to better know what we are going to do in the future, what we can correct, and what we did well that we must proceed to do that.
Marvelous. And I see that. I mean, I'm blessed to have the team upstairs that work with our clients. So yes, I see that day in, day out from you guys. It's amazing. And what are you looking forward to this year? What's the plan for 23?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to expanding my network as tech expert is not only limited to Rwanda. I'm so lucky to get the connection from different sites of tech expert, but also getting to get connected to different future leaders, future tech leaders, different people that are into our field, if I can say the tech field. I'm looking forward to expanding that network. I'm looking forward to making a change in the tech field, whereby this is a field that we still see, I'll be honest, we still see a few female in this field. So I'm looking forward to making that impact into the tech field, having a lot of ladies join that field, but more specifically getting connected to the tech leaders and getting to learn from them. They're the tech experts, getting to learn from them and getting to know what we can do for the future. That's what I'm looking forward in the future. But most of all, I'm looking forward to continually providing the best support that I can and making sure that our customers get fully satisfied with the services that we offer.
Amazing. And that's all we can ask from you. That's brilliant. Thank you very much. Really good to see you there, working hard. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Move on a slide. You just heard from Belize, and Belize is very much part of this team you see here. And the important thing I wanted to bring out, I guess, from a impact perspective, it isn't just about the country, it isn't just about the people, but obviously it's all about the clients we work for as well. We grew the site here in Kigali. We started with 2 lines of business and 50 people, and we're now over 200 people and 16 to 18 lines of business. And in that year, we've managed to maintain all of our support sat scores. So from a client and customer satisfaction, really important, as Belize talked about there. Case resolution as well, making sure we've got through the work that we need to do in the right period of time, and making sure that the guys are productive, and particularly, as we've talked about from a talent perspective, retention point of view, really low attrition. So we run at less than 1% attrition a month from the team here, partly due to the engagement piece we do, to the work we do to invest, and making sure that we follow through on those requirements from a Gen Z perspective and creating an environment that people want to work in. Just wanted to mention one last thing before we see if there's any questions, and that's, we've talked a lot about the technical side of things, and the customer sat piece for me is really important, and for me it's the start point for customer success. We have a customer success team running out of Rwanda now as well, so we went live with that mid last year. With a real focus on how do you create relationships. So it was really the empathy that the team provide, and people like Belize and Eloy that you've kind of had a brief insight into, translates really well into how do you drive revenue? How do you deepen those relationships? How do you make sure that customers really understand the value of the products that they've got and what they can do more of? So we focus this team on working directly with some of our clients to say, right, how do we maximize that revenue? How do we make sure that those ongoing revenue streams are solid and people are getting the best out of their product and then looking for the next things that can help them? So we've seen some really great success with customer success. And I know when we're at Interact later on in the year, just that ability to evidence what customer success looks like from a tech expert's perspective, and how that fits in from a technical support point of view and providing an all-round service doing from a customer side of things. So yeah, I think that was pretty much it. We've had a couple of questions in. I'm very pleased the presentation's working for everyone. Thank you very much, Teresa. Thank you very much, Jen. I didn't know, Eileen, if you wanted to talk any more about the skilling piece that sits behind some of this.
Yeah, and I think the question was about ensuring ongoing skills growth for employees. And I think one of the things that, again, just for leaders of people to think about is, as we said earlier, it's not just the current jobs, but it's the jobs of the future. So I think always having a plan that's not just, we've all had plans for years on learning and development and making training available. But I think the difference now is that we have to start looking at skills that are specific for job roles. And that includes not just the hard tech skills, but the power skills as well. So what we're seeing is companies starting to look at roles and the competencies for those roles, identifying the people in their organizations that have profiles that would be good fits for those future roles, and aligning their skilling and learning journeys around getting them to that next role, whether that's a year away, 2 years away. But it also, as I said earlier, helps with the retention, because people can see the journey they're on and can see the progress. So I think that's the thing that we need to be thinking more about, is not just training for the sake of training, but having very specific skilling that is job role and competency focused.
Awesome. Thank you for doing that. And that's pretty much it, everybody. Thank you very much for listening today, being part of this. If you've got any questions, obviously we can chat through techexperts.com. And as John mentioned earlier, then we will contact details in the TSIA side of things. Thank you very much. I think we're done. Vanessa, John, anything to add?
No, thank you so much, Gary. I'll just say that I know there were quite a few questions we didn't answer here live, but don't worry, we haven't forgotten about you, and we will make sure to follow up. And since we have come to the conclusion of today's webinar, a few more reminders. There will be an exit survey at the end of today's live webinar. If you could please take a few moments to provide your feedback on the content and your experience by filling out that brief survey. A link to the recorded version of today's webinar will be sent out within the next 24 hours. And I'd like to take this time to thank all of our presenters, John, Aileen, Gary, Charmy, and Belize, for delivering a truly outstanding session. And thank you to everyone for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us for today's live webinar, Building the Tech Workforce of Tomorrow, Where, Why, and How, brought to you by Technology and Services Industry Association and sponsored by Tech Experts. We look forward to seeing you at our next TSIA webinar. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.